Warning, the following contains nothing but spoilers for Bastion.
Proper story is supposed to start at the beginning. Ain't so simple with this one. Now here's a kid whose whole world got all twisted, leaving him stranded on a rock in the sky. He gets up, sets off for the Bastion, where everyone agreed to go in case of trouble. Ground forms up under his feet as it pointing the way. He don't stop to wonder why. Finds his lifelong friend just lying in the road. Well, it's a touching reunion. Kid just rages for a while. An old ferry barge sends the kid on his way. The Bastion's real close now. He finds the core to the wharf district. He steals the city's heart. Might as well. Now the kid sees something stranger still. His mind races. Did anybody else survive? Sure enough, he finds another. He finds me.
For some reason, video games really enjoy post-apocalyptic worlds, but this one is a little different. Throughout the entire game, the terrain forms itself before your very eyes. It's absolutely gorgeous, and communicates a sense of uneasiness and uncertainty that someone would feel if their whole world was ripped apart. While the premise is fairly simple, the delivery is where this game really shines.
The dead welcome him with open arms.
Every area is dripping in narrative, and eventually we learn the history of this world before it was annihilated. Some levels are designed to show what life used to be like in Selandia, others were there to show what was lost.
The Jawsons, they didn't make it.
And some even explain how the city came to be. Every aspect of the gameplay is reflected in the narrative. Each of the 12 weapons you use, they belong to a specific military faction such as the Trappers, the Breakers, or the Marshals. Each of the enemies you face, they fulfill a function within the city or were feared beings of the wild. And if you wanted an extra challenge, you could activate idols at the shrine, showing us which gods the Selandians worshipped.
Piv.
The attention to detail is staggering, and by the end of the game, we know how the city of Selandia was able to prosper. We know of their war with the Ura, and of course, we've learned the cause of the calamity itself.
It was Selandia's master plan to wipe the Ura out.
But the most memorable aspect of this game is Rux, the narrator. Throughout your journey, almost every action you take triggers a narration.
It's him. I've come to warn you, he says.
Whether it's for exposition,
it takes hard work and planning, and it also takes Burstone Quarry.
Explanation,
we bought the whole place from the Ura on the cheap.
Or just setting the tone.
What do you say to a man who's seen too much?
Rux's omnipresent voice guides you through each level and makes every action feel more meaningful. This is a storytelling technique that is unique to video games, and one that can be used with incredible versatility. For example, when you reach Jawson's Bog, the level quickly becomes a surreal mind trip. The narrator's voice is still present, but this time it's twisted and creepy.
The dead welcome him with open arms. Now the kid sees something stranger still. Did anybody else survive? Sure enough, he finds peckers, lunkheads, wallflowers, pincushions, vine apples, swamp weeds, ankle gators. Would you look at what he did to poor old Rondi the bartender?
The developers took their own trope and turned it around brilliantly to create a sense of discomfort and uneasiness. Even though it's a signature technique of Supergiant Games, I would really like to see other video games attempt this in the future. Along with Rux, 2 other survivors join you at the Bastion. Zulf, an ambassador, and Zia, a musician. Both are among the few Ura that lived in Selandia, albeit for very different reasons. But just as you're about to return with the final power core, Rux's voice is there to give you some ever so subtle foreshadowing.
his journey's over, right? Well, no, it ain't. Not by a long shot. Kid knows something's up when we ain't there to give a warm welcome. See, Zolf and I were just wrapping up a heated discussion. Zolf can barely muster the words. The calamity failed, he says, but I will not. The Bastion is under siege. Let it fall. You should not go back. Kid hears him, but he ain't about to be deterred. If that's the way it is, he says, then I won't stop you. Because my countrymen will.
Unlike the feral creatures that inhabit the wild, our final enemies are the Ura who survive the calamity. Now, many video games fail to acknowledge when you, the player, are basically killing a whole bunch of people. But not this time. After suffering many casualties at your hands, the Ura are furious at Zolf and blame him for bringing you, the player, into their home. They decide to leave him for dead, and here you have a choice. If you choose to leave him, you get to demolish everything in your path with an overpowered battling ram. But if you choose to take him with you, you're left vulnerable, and the Ura will actually cease fire and watch as you carry him to safety. As a nice little touch, one of the Ura soldiers tries to shoot you, but he is quickly taken out. After this intense journey, the Bastion is finally powered, and you, the player, are left with the ultimate choice. You can use the Bastion to reverse time and undo the calamity, or you can set sail and try to live in this broken world. But before I discuss the outcome of this decision, it's important to understand what it represents. Each of the characters in Bastion is made to represent the different ways that people deal with tragic loss. Rux wants to undo the calamity. He's the one who built the Bastion and has thus given us the option to go back in time.
Life's little setbacks. Imagine if you could have another go at him.
Throughout your journey, Rux constantly reassures you that whatever you do is of no consequence.
He's done what's best for him, don't you worry. Don't you worry. We'll all be better off once the Bastion is complete.
If you've ever suffered a tremendous loss, your first instinct was probably something along the lines of, I wish I could go back. Zia doesn't reveal how she reacts until the very end of the game, but she stands as a polar opposite to Rux. Her life before the calamity was dreadful, and as such, she's capable of seeing the more positive aspects of this post-apocalyptic world.
If I could be any place I wanted, I'd stay right here. We could go anywhere in the world.
Zia represents our ability to move on and cherish what is left rather than cry over what is lost. Finally, we have Zolf. As a man who sought to bring peace between Solandians and the Ura, he is livid when he finds out the truth behind the calamity. Tragically, all Zolf managed to bring about was more unnecessary destruction and loss. His reaction stands as a cautionary tale for us. And now, at the end of the game, it's time for you to make your choice. I always spend quite a bit of time on this decision, but in the end, I always pick the same path.
Oh, mother. And here I figured you'd had enough of me by now. You could have undone the calamity itself, but instead you want to stay in a world like this. I gotta admit, kid, I ain't yet put much thought in that idea.
And that's all for my analysis. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share your thoughts in the comments below.